In this video, we will see the Name Manager and Names functionality used in Microsoft Excel. Name Manager facilitates the user to define a name for a cell, an array of cells or a table, a constant, and a formula. They can then be referenced by using their defined names. To understand it, let us see this example. Here we have monthly salary data of an employee. The annual income of the employee can be calculated by summing the salary of each month. Here is our sum formula. We are selecting the salary range from January to December. Then, press Enter. Here we got the annual salary. By the way, the shortcut to get the sum is by selecting the cell range and pressing the Alt and equal keys. We got the sum. Alternately, what we can do is define a name for this range of salaries. We will see various ways to define a name. For now, we will use the simplest method. Our array of salaries is selected. This is the name box. We will click on it and provide a name. I am giving the name as salary. Then, press Enter. So, we have given the name, salary, to this array of cells holding the monthly salary. We can click here and see that the salary is listed. We can also see all the defined names, if there are any, by pressing the function key, F3. We have our salary name here. Now for calculating annual income, we can write the formula like this. Equal to, sum of the salary. Then, press Enter. Here is the annual income calculated. So, you get the idea. Instead of dealing with cells or cell ranges, it is easy to work with a better understandable name. This was a brief idea on the use of names. Name Manager, as the name suggests, manages all the names that the user defines. We can access it by pressing Ctrl plus F3 keys. Or we can go to Formulas, and click on Name Manager. Here we can see all the names we have defined. We can create new names, edit or delete the already defined names. A little note about the naming convention. Remember that the name you give should be a single word. It should start with an alphabet and can contain numbers and underscores. Other special characters are not allowed. Names should not conflict with existing names in the workbook. For example, you cannot use a name like ABC123. ABC123 is a cell location in the worksheet. Keep names simple and understandable. As we mentioned earlier, there are multiple ways to create names. One of the methods we just saw in our example was that we created a name for this range of cells using the name box. In this example, we provided the name. We can let the Name Manager take the name of the column as a defined name, instead of us giving a name. First, let me delete the previously defined name that we gave. Pressing Ctrl plus F3 will open the Name Manager. Then we can select the name and click the Delete button. Click OK. Now the previously defined name is cleared, we will select the data column along with the column name. Then, under Formulas, click on Create from Selection. Or press Ctrl plus Shift plus F3 keys on the keyboard. Here we will checkmark the top row checkbox to let the Name Manager create a name from the value in the top row of our cell selection. Then click OK. Now if we press F3, it will open the Paste Name dialog box. Here our defined name is listed. Now let us see another method. For this, we will define a name for the annual income cell. We will select the data. Then, under Formulas, click on Define Name. The new name dialog box will appear. Here you can mention the name that you wish to give. We can see that the Name Manager has smartly identified the most suitable name for the cell. We can change it if we want. Since the suggested name is good enough, we will go with it. The scope or access level of the name is set at the workbook level by default. Here in Comments, We can write a description for the name. Refers to field is the value for the name. Right now it is referring to the value in a fixed cell location, B16, inside the worksheet named Name Manager. Click OK to create the name. Now if we press F3, the Paste Name dialog box opens. And in this, our annual income name is listed. We can also access the New Name dialog box through the Name Manager. Click on the Name Manager button, or press Ctrl plus F3 to open the Name Manager. Click on the New button. This opens the New Name dialog box. Here we can provide a name, select its scope, describe it, and then click OK to create it. So these were some ways to create a name. We have mentioned in the beginning that the names can be used to refer to a cell, range of cells, constant, and formula. We have already seen examples of defining a name for a cell, and a range of cells earlier in this video. Now let us see how to name a constant. Here we have mentioned a tax deduction of 5%. To calculate the tax amount, we will multiply the annual income with the tax rate. We will write, equal to annual income. This is the name we defined for annual income earlier. We will use this name in our formula. So, we will multiply the annual income with the 5% tax rate from this cell. Then press Enter. This calculated the tax amount for us. Or, we can define a named constant for the tax rate. To do so, open the Name Manager. Then click on New. This will open the New Name dialog box. Alternatively, we can press Ctrl plus Alt plus F3 to open the New Name dialog box directly. We will give a name here. Say, tax rate. We will leave the scope for the name to default, which is workbook. We don't need any description. Here, in refers to text box, we will directly mention the tax rate percentage instead of having a cell value referred to. So we will write, equal to 5%. Then press OK. The named constant will be created. We can check the Name Manager. We can see that our named constant, tax rate, is defined as 5%. If we wish to edit it, then we just need to select it. Then modify what it refers to. We will modify it to 10%. Then, click this tick mark to commit the modifications. We can see that the tax rate is changed to 10%. Alternatively, we can also edit it by selecting it and clicking the Edit button. Here we can do the modifications. We have the option to modify the name as well. Let's set the tax rate back to 5%. Then click OK. We can see that the tax rate is now modified to 5%. Now we will again calculate the tax amount. But this time we will use our named constant tax rate in the formula instead of cell reference. So our formula is, equal to annual income multiplied by the tax rate. Press Enter. And we get our tax amount calculated. So this was about a name being defined as a named constant. Now let's take an example for named formula. To get the idea, we will define a named formula to calculate the net salary. But first, let us give a name to the tax amount cell. For simplicity, we will use name box to define a name for it. For better understanding, we will name it as tax_amount. Then press Enter. Now we will define a named formula for calculating net salary. Press Ctrl plus Alt plus F3 to open the New Name dialog box. We will go with the suggested name as net_salary. You may name it as per your suitability. Let the scope be the complete workbook. Now in the Refer to field, we will write our formula. Net salary will be equal to annual income, minus the tax amount. Since we have defined names for all the variables in the formula, we will use those names. So the formula will be equal to. We may not remember the defined names. So, we can press F3 to open the Paste Name dialog box. Select the name annual_income. Click OK. Then minus. Again from the paste list, select tax_amount. Press OK. We have our formula ready. Alternatively, we can also do this. Equal to. Then click this small up arrow icon. The new name window will become small refer to window. Then, under Formulas, click Use in Formula. It will display a list of all the defined names. We will select annual_income from here. Then minus. Again from Use in Formula, we will select tax_amount. Then press Enter. We will have our formula in the Refer to field. Then click OK. Now our named formula is ready. Here for net salary, we will use the named formula. We will write, equal to. Then the named formula, net_salary. Press Enter. We have our net salary calculated. So, this was a brief idea about named formulas. Now let us see an example of defining a name for a table. We have our monthly salary data here. Let us convert it into a table. To do so, select all the relevant data. Then, press Ctrl+T keys. Create Table dialog box will appear. Since we have also selected the column names, we will make sure that the checkbox for My Table has headers is checked. Then, click OK. We can see that our data is transformed into a table. Right now the default name of the table is Table 3. We will change it to some understandable name. For example, salary_table. You can provide any other better meaningful name. Then, press Enter. If we check in this name box, we can find our table name listed in the list of all defined names. For this example, I will take a threshold salary value that I will be using in my problem statement. I will set the threshold value as 45,000. Let's format it a little bit. Also, using the name box, I will provide a name to the threshold value cell. Now, my problem statement is that I want to extract the names of all the months that have salaries more than the threshold value. That is, more than 45,000. It is a simple problem statement. I will use the if statement in my formula. So the formula will be equal to if. Next, we have to give the logical condition part. Our complete logic will be if the salary in the salary table is greater than the threshold value of 45,000, then return its corresponding month name. Else, return nothing. We will write it as if round bracket open. Table name, salary_table. Open the square bracket. Select the column heading, salary. Close the square bracket. Greater than. Threshold. Comma. Now we need to provide what to do if the logical condition is satisfied. We want to return the corresponding month name from the month column of the salary_table. So we will write salary_table. Square bracket open. Select column heading, month. Square bracket close. Comma. Now we need to provide what to do when the condition isn't satisfied. We will return nothing, or say, return an empty string. So we will just write, empty double quotes. Our complete logic is over. We will close the round bracket for the if statement. Now press Enter. It gives us the result containing the names of the month that have a salary of more than 45,000. We can see that along with the relevant information, it returned empty cells wherever the condition was not satisfied. We can check that only the months of October and December have salaries of more than 45,000. But we want to display the result in presentable form. We just want to display the names of the months one below the other in a cell. To do so, we will use text join. We will modify this formula. It will be equal to. Then write, text join. Start round bracket. Now we will need to give arguments for the text join. For the first argument, we need to specify the delimiter to show a separation between the values. Or say, we will join the results with the delimiter that we will provide. Since we want month names one below the other in a cell, we will use a new line character. So we will specify here, char and in round brackets, 10, comma. The second argument asks us to specify if we want to ignore the empty cells or not. Since true is to ignore the empty cells, we will specify true in the second argument, comma. The third argument will be our previously written if statement. Now we need to close the round bracket of the text join. Then, press enter. We have our results in a single cell. All the empty cells are ignored. But the results are not one below the other. To solve this, we need to enable wrap text for the results cell. Right-click on the cell. Select Format. Click on the Alignment tab. Here enable the wrap text checkbox. Then click OK. And here we have our expected result. This is how we used the table name to create a formula for our problem statement. We can do one more thing. Instead of writing the formula in the worksheet, we can create a named formula. Then use it easily wherever we need it. We will just copy the complete formula that we wrote. We will delete it from here. Then, open the new name dialog box. We will give a suitable name. For example, salary _above_ threshold. We will keep the scope for the name as workbook. In the refer to field, we will paste our formula. This is our formula. Click OK. Our named formula is created. Now here, we just have to write equal to name of our formula, salary _above_ threshold. Then press enter. And we have our result. Well, we need to adjust the height of the cell to see the complete result. Since the named formula and other names had a global scope at the workbook level, we can access them in other worksheets of our workbook. We have created a new worksheet named Sheet 1. Here we will access the names of the month that have a salary above 45,000 from the salary table in another worksheet. We will type equal to our named formula, instead of writing the complete formula once again. Then, press enter. And we have our result. Of course, we need to enable the wrap text for the cell to see the names of the months one below the other. We can select the cell and use the shortcut key, Alt+H+W. And here we have our expected result. If we modify a value in our original table, say we will change the salary for February and make it greater than 45,000. As soon as we modify it, all the results get updated. We can see that February has also returned in the month list. If we check on the other worksheet, we can see that the results are updated automatically. That is the benefit of scope at the workbook level. It's the default scope for a name. We used the delimiter as the new line. That's why the names of the months were one below the other. We can provide any other delimiter as we wish. Let us change our delimiter in the formula to a comma. We will open the Name Manager. Then edit our named formula. We will replace the char, 10, with a comma in double quotes. Then, click OK. Close this. We can see that now our results are joined by a comma instead of a new line. The same result will be reflected on the other worksheet. So, this was a brief overview of defining a name for a table, along with an example. Let us briefly talk about the scope of the defined names. In Excel, we have workbook level scope and worksheet level scope. When a name is defined with workbook level scope, it can be accessed globally inside any worksheet within the workbook. When a name has a worksheet level scope, then its direct access is local to that particular worksheet only. Let's see an example. We created a named constant tax rate having a value of 5% and scope as the workbook. So, it can be accessed globally within the workbook. Let us create a new worksheet. Sheet 1. In Sheet 1, we want to use a tax rate of 5.5% instead of using the global 5% tax rate. To achieve this requirement, we will create a new named constant. We will give the same name to it. Tax rate. But for this tax rate, we will choose the scope as Sheet 1. That means its direct access is local to Sheet 1 only. In the Refer to field, we will write the new tax rate, 5.5%. Then click OK to create it. Now here in the Name Manager, we can see that we have two named constants by the name tax rate. One tax rate has a value of 5% and has global access workbook level scope. The other one has a value of 5.5% and has a local access scope in Sheet 1. Now if we try to access the rate in Sheet 1, we get options to choose from. We can choose the global tax rate with workbook level scope, or the local tax rate with Sheet 1 level scope. Let's first choose the local tax rate with Sheet 1 access. We can see that it qualifies it with the sheet name before giving the defined name. Press Enter. We get a value of 5.5%. Here we will access the rate with workbook level scope. We can see that it qualifies it with the file name before giving the defined name. Note that if the sheet name or the file name, as in this case, has spaces in between, then put them in between the single quotes. We get the tax rate 5%. Now let's see if it is possible to access the local tax rate that we defined for Sheet 1 from another worksheet. Here, when we try to access the tax rate, we get only one option to select. And it is the workbook scope tax rate. We get the tax rate value of 5%. Let me quickly change it to percentage. Yeah, so 5% it is. That means we cannot directly access a locally defined name from another worksheet. But if we want to access it, then we have to provide its fully qualified reference. To do so, we will write equal to, then the name of the worksheet whose locally defined name we want to access. It's Sheet 1 for us. Then, exclamation mark. Then, the defined name tax rate. Then press Enter. And we get 5.5%, which is the value of the rate with Sheet 1 scope. Let's see one more example with a slightly different way of defining the names. Here we have multiple worksheets named based on different tax slabs. Each sheet has its own tax rate value mentioned in cell B2. Slab 1 has a tax rate of 5%. Slab 2 has 10%. And Slab 3 has a tax rate of 15%. Now one way to manage the defined names for different tax rates is by giving unique names, maintaining global scope as the workbook. Each unique name refers to the cell in a worksheet that holds the value of tax rate. Now we can access these unique names as required. For the worksheet Slab 1, we get 5%. For Slab 2, we get 10%. For the Slab 3 worksheet, we get 15%. All the values are as desired. The downside of defining unique names is that we may end up with a massive list of names and managing them might become difficult. One has to remember how these unique names are defined, and will have to use them accordingly. Or, we can define named constants, keeping names the same, but limiting their scope to worksheet level. These are the constant values. We just need to remember one name and use it in the worksheets and get localized results. Let's try using these local scope same name constants in our worksheets. First in the Slab 1 worksheet. It gives us 5%. Now in the Slab 2 worksheet. It gives us 10%. In worksheet Slab 3. We get 15%. We get our desired results. But the downside is the same as we saw in the previous method. We might still end up with too many named constants with the same name but with different local scopes. If we only require a name with local scope usage, and if we prefer to keep the referred value in a worksheet cell, then there is a more efficient approach. Note that each workbook has its corresponding rate value in cell B2. We will select it in one of the sheets and open the Name Manager. We will create a new name. We will provide the name as tax. Keep the scope global, that is, at the workbook level. In the Refer to field, we have a reference to cell B2 of the sheet named Slab 1. From the formula, remove the name of the sheet. We will end up with equal to exclamation mark. Then cell reference B2. Now, click OK. The name, tax, is listed only once in the Name Manager, but it exists locally for all the worksheets in the file, even though the scope is selected as Workbook. Now if we reference the name tax in worksheet Slab 1, it returns the tax rate for Slab 1. If we reference it in Slab 2 worksheet, it returns the tax rate for Slab 2. Similarly, it returns the tax rate for the Slab 3 worksheet. So, we are using just one defined name in all worksheets and getting localized results. The key point to remember is that the tax rate value should be stored in the same cell reference in all worksheets of the workbook. In our example, it is B2. Let's see what happens otherwise. Let us create a new sheet, Sheet 4. If we try to reference the name in Sheet 4, we get the result as 0. This is because Sheet 4 has no value in the cell reference B2 for the name to refer to. So it returns 0. Named formula without the worksheet name but with an exclamation mark followed by the cell reference refers to the current worksheet whereas named formula is being used. For our understanding, we can interpret it like this: refer to the cell reference in this current sheet. That's why it worked like having a local scope even though the scope was selected as the workbook. Note that this method works only when a named formula is created using Name Manager. This was all that I learned about names and Name Manager in Microsoft Excel. I hope the information was useful. If you liked the information, then please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for your time and patience. Have a nice day.